The email from First National Bank arrived at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Congratulations on your new home loan," it began cheerfully. "Your first payment of $2,247.86 is due on August 1st. I stared at my phone screen, completely still in my office, chair as colleagues bustled around me, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in my inbox. A $390,000 mortgage had been taken out in my name, for a property I'd never seen, in a city I'd never lived in, using financial information I'd never provided. The attached documentation showed the loan had been processed 3 days earlier, with my electronic signature on every page. My co-borrower was listed as my younger brother, Ryan. The property address was in Naples, Florida, where my parents had always dreamed of retiring. I felt the familiar cold clarity settle over me. Not panic, not even anger yet, but the focused awareness that comes when a long-anticipated threat finally materializes. I opened my desk drawer and removed a slim black notebook, flipping to a page marked Protocol 7. Each line item had been carefully prepared over the past 18 months, ever since I'd discovered my father exploring online identity theft forums during a holiday visit home. As my colleagues continued their normal Tuesday afternoon routines, I began methodically working through my list. First, I forwarded the email to a special Gmail account I'd established for this specific scenario. Second, I called my attorney, using the phrase we'd established for this situation. "I need to discuss the Naples contingency." Third, I logged into a secured cloud account containing documents I'd been quietly assembling: bank statements, credit reports, and most importantly, the recordings I'd made of 3 separate conversations where I explicitly refused to co-sign any loans for my family members. What my family didn't realize, couldn't possibly have known, was that I hadn't just suspected this might happen. I had been meticulously preparing for it, creating a comprehensive defense against the financial exploitation that had been building for years. As I worked through my protocol with mechanical precision, my phone lit up with an incoming call. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I declined it, sending a pre-written text. "In meetings all afternoon. Call you tonight." I needed time to execute the remaining steps before engaging with them. By the time we spoke, the machinery I'd set in motion would be irreversible. My name is Daniel Mercer, 34 years old, a risk assessment specialist for a multinational insurance corporation based in Chicago. My professional life revolves around analyzing potential threats, establishing mitigation protocols, and ensuring that when problems arise, as they inevitably do, response systems are already in place. I've built a successful career by anticipating worst-case scenarios and preparing for them methodically, a skill set that has earned me consistent promotions and financial stability far exceeding what anyone from my background might have expected. Grew up in a small manufacturing town in southern Illinois, the oldest of 3 children in a family perpetually living beyond their means. My father worked as a sales manager at a local car dealership, earning decent commissions during good months but struggling through the lean periods, which seemed to grow more frequent every year. My mother managed a retail clothing store, supplementing our income while maintaining the appearance of middle-class comfort that was increasingly difficult to sustain. Money was a constant source of tension in our household. Bill collectors called regularly. Credit card statements arrived in alarming quantities. Yet somehow, we always had the newest electronics, took annual vacations, and maintained a lifestyle that projected success to our community. It wasn't until I was preparing college financial aid applications that I discovered the precarious financial reality behind this facade. My parents had remortgaged our home twice, had 5 maxed-out credit cards between them, and had borrowed against their retirement accounts. Despite this, I managed to secure scholarships and student loans to attend the University of Illinois, where I studied actuarial science and business management. Throughout college, I worked part-time jobs to minimize my debt and establish strict budgeting practices that would become the foundation of my financial discipline. I was determined to break the cycle of financial instability I'd witnessed. Growing up, after graduation, I built my career methodically, starting in entry-level risk assessment positions and advancing through increasingly responsible roles. I lived well below my means, aggressively paid down student loans, built an emergency fund, and began investing systematically. By age 30, I had achieved financial stability that contrasted sharply with my family's continuing struggles. My siblings followed different paths. My brother Ryan, 2 years younger, pursued a series of entrepreneurial ventures, none successful, all requiring capital injections from my parents. My sister Melissa, the youngest, had married early and divorced, quickly, returning home with substantial debt and a part-time job that barely covered her car payment. Both continued living in our hometown, financially entangled with our parents in ways that seemed to perpetuate rather than resolve their collective instability. The dynamic between us shifted as my financial position improved. Initially, my family expressed pride in my success, but this gradually transformed into expectations that I would help support the family. What began as occasional requests for small loans evolved into assumptions that I would contribute to larger expenses. Home repairs, medical bills not covered by insurance, Ryan's latest business idea. I established boundaries, willing to help, with genuine emergencies but refusing to enable financial decisions I considered irresponsible. This created tension, particularly with my father, who viewed my reluctance as a personal rejection rather than financial prudence. Family helps family became his mantra, implying that my independence was a form of betrayal rather than self-preservation. The first significant breach occurred 3 years ago. During a routine credit check, I discovered an unfamiliar credit card had been opened in my name, with a $7,500 balance. The address was my parents' home, but the online account was registered to my father's email. When confronted, he initially denied knowledge, but eventually admitted to borrowing my identity because his own credit was too damaged to qualify for new accounts. "I was going to pay it off before you ever found out," he explained, seemingly genuinely confused by my anger. "It's not like it hurt you. Your credit score is perfect." I paid off the card to protect my credit rating, filed a police report, but declined to press charges, and instead insisted on family counseling to address the boundary violation. My parents attended 2 sessions before declaring it unnecessary and too expensive. My siblings sided with them, suggesting I was overreacting to what was just Dad trying to handle things. Following this incident, I implemented comprehensive credit monitoring and placed freezes with all 3 major credit bureaus. I assumed this would prevent further violations, but underestimated my family's determination. 18 months ago, during Christmas at my parents' home, I borrowed my father's laptop to check work emails. When I finished, I noticed he had left several browser tabs open, including one on a forum discussing methods for bypassing credit freezes and another detailing how to obtain fraudulent income verification for mortgage applications. I said nothing, but photographed the screen with my phone and began quietly developing what I called contingency protocols, systematic responses to various financial exploitation scenarios I might face. In the months that followed, the pressure intensified. My parents began talking constantly about their retirement dreams, specifically a home in Naples, Florida. Ryan announced plans to relocate to Florida as well, to help them settle in and start a business nearby. My mother started sending me real estate listings with notes like, "Wouldn't this be perfect for all of us someday?" and "Just needs someone with good credit to make it happen." When directly asked if I would co-sign a mortgage, I explicitly refused, documenting these conversations surreptitiously. I explained that I was saving for my own home in Chicago and could not commit to joint property ownership hundreds of miles away. These refusals were met with increasing emotional manipulation, suggestions that I didn't care about my parents' happiness, that I was selfishly hoarding resources while they struggled, that I owed them for the sacrifices they had made for my education. What they didn't know was that I was systematically documenting everything while strengthening my financial and legal protections. I consulted with an attorney specialized in identity theft. I established a separate email account where I forwarded all family communications about financial matters. I kept meticulous records of every conversation where I declined financial entanglement. Most importantly, I created specific response plans for various scenarios, from minor credit fraud to major loan applications. Which brings us back to that Tuesday afternoon and the $390,000 mortgage notification. As I worked through my predetermined protocol, I felt a strange calm. This wasn't an unexpected disaster, but a contingency I had prepared for exhaustively. By 5:30 p.m., I had completed the initial response steps, contacting the bank's fraud department, filing reports with the FTC and local police, submitting formal identity theft affidavits, and providing my attorney with all relevant documentation. I had also accessed my cloud storage containing recorded conversations explicitly refusing any involvement in family property purchases. The bank's fraud investigator had sounded genuinely concerned during our call. "This is one of the more sophisticated cases I've seen," she commented. "They had your social security number, employment details, even digital copies of your past tax returns. The electronic signature was verified through an email account in your name. An email I didn't create," I clarified. "Exactly. We've flagged the loan for immediate investigation and frozen further proceedings." When I finally called my mother that evening, I was prepared for either denial or justification. I received both. "Daniel, you're completely overreacting," she began, her voice carrying the practiced exasperation I'd heard throughout my childhood whenever I questioned financial decisions. "We were going to surprise you. It's an investment property. You'll be thanking us when you see how much equity builds up." "Mum, I didn't apply for this loan. I didn't sign any documents. I explicitly told you multiple times I would not participate in buying property in Florida." "Well, your father handled the paperwork. You know how he is with details. There was probably just a misunderstanding about whether you'd agreed." Creating fraudulent email accounts and forging signatures isn't a misunderstanding. It's identity theft and mortgage fraud. Her tone shifted, instantly from dismissive to panicked. "What have you done? Please tell me you haven't involved the authorities. This is a family matter. I've reported it to the bank's fraud department, the FTC, and local police. I've also engaged my attorney." The silence that followed was broken by my father taking the phone. "Son, you need to retract those reports immediately," he said, his voice attempting authority but betraying fear. "You have no idea what you've done. This could have serious consequences." "I'm aware of the consequences. That's precisely why I've taken these actions. We did this for all of us," he exploded. "A family compound in Naples. You, us, Ryan and his new business. Even a place. For Melissa to start over, we couldn't qualify on our own, and you were being stubborn. Sometimes parents have to make decisions for the good of the whole family. Taking out fraudulent loans isn't making decisions, it's committing felonies. So you'll send your own parents to jail. Is that who you've become?" I had anticipated this exact response, the attempt to transfer responsibility, to make me the villain for responding to their criminal actions. I had prepared for it specifically, crafting a response that addressed the manipulation directly. "I didn't create this situation," I replied calmly. "You did, by deciding that my explicit refusal didn't matter, that my financial autonomy was yours to override. What happens next depends entirely on your actions, not mine." "What does that mean?" he asked suspiciously. "It means I've established a process with my attorney. If you and Ryan immediately sign notarized statements acknowledging the fraud, accepting full responsibility for the loan, and agreeing to undergo financial counseling, I'll consider withdrawing the police report. Without those statements by noon tomorrow, the process continues as initiated." The call deteriorated further, with my father alternating between threats and pleas, my mother crying in the background. Eventually, Ryan came on the line, his voice taut with anger. "You could have just said no if you didn't want to help," he snapped. "Instead, you're destroying the family." "I did say no, Ryan. Multiple times, explicitly, to all of you. You decided my no didn't matter." After ending the call, I forwarded the recording to my attorney and prepared for the difficult days ahead. Sleep came surprisingly easily. Not because I was untroubled, but because I had eliminated the uncertainty that had been weighing on me for months. The threat had materialized. My response was in motion, and now outcomes would follow their natural course. The next morning brought a flurry of calls and texts from extended family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, all suddenly concerned about the situation and eager to help mediate. I recognized the pattern immediately. My parents were mobilizing family pressure, trying to create a unified front against my overreaction. I responded to each with the same measured text. I appreciate your concern, but this is a legal matter now, and all communication should go through my attorney. At 11:47 a.m., 13 minutes before my deadline, my attorney called. I've received signed statements from both your father and brother, she said. They're acknowledging creating fraudulent documentation, using your identity without permission, and applying for the mortgage, despite your explicit refusal. They're also agreeing to financial counseling as specified. And the loan. The bank has confirmed it's been flagged as fraudulent and will not proceed. There won't be any financial obligation for you, but there may be consequences for them with that lending institution. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that my preparations had worked, sadness that they had been necessary, and lingering anger at the violation of trust. What would you advise regarding the police report? Legally, you can withdraw it based on their compliance with your terms. However, I want to be clear that doing so doesn't erase the crime. It just means you're not pursuing charges. Given the family dynamics, I'd recommend maintaining clear documentation of everything, even if you choose not to escalate further. After careful consideration, I decided to withdraw the police report, contingent on verification that my family actually attended the required financial counseling. This wasn't forgiveness. It was a calculated decision that balanced consequences with the possibility of behavioral change. The weeks that followed were predictably difficult. My parents and siblings portrayed themselves as victims of my excessive response. Extended family members took sides, with most supporting my parents' perspective that family helping family should supersede concerns about fraud or consent. My mother left tearful voicemails about dreams destroyed and retirement plans ruined. I maintained my boundaries, engaging only through my attorney regarding the financial issues while taking a step back from family interactions until the immediate crisis had passed. This distance gave me space to process my feelings without being pulled back into their manipulative dynamics. 3 months later, I received an unexpected email from Ryan. Unlike the accusatory messages that had preceded it, this one was reflective, almost subdued. The financial counselor made us map out every debt, every credit card, every loan, he wrote. It was worse than I thought. Way worse. Dad's been moving money around for years, trying to cover old debts with new ones. Mum had no idea how bad it was. Neither did I. I'm not saying what they did to you was right, it wasn't. But I'm starting to understand the desperation behind it. This glimpse of awareness was the first positive sign I'd seen. While not apologizing directly, Ryan was at least acknowledging the reality of the situation, rather than the family narrative that had been constructed around it. 2 weeks later, my father called. Our conversation was brief, but substantively different from our previous interactions. The counselor says, I need to make amends, he began awkwardly. Part of that is acknowledging what I did wrong without making excuses. So here it is. I violated your trust. I tried to use your good credit to solve problems I created. I put my wants ahead of your clearly stated boundaries. And when caught, I tried to make you feel guilty instead of taking responsibility. He paused. I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm starting to understand what I did. This wasn't a Hollywood reconciliation moment. Decades of financial dysfunction couldn't be resolved in a single conversation, but it represented a first step towards something new. Accountability rather than manipulation, acknowledgement rather than denial. Over the following year, our family relationships slowly rebuilt on different terms. My parents, working with their financial counselor, developed their first realistic budget in decades, and began the long process of debt reduction. They sold their oversized home for a modest condo, eliminated credit card debt through a structured payment plan, and adjusted to living within their actual means rather than their desired lifestyle. Ryan found stable employment managing a local restaurant rather than pursuing another undercapitalized business venture. Melissa increased her work hours and took responsibility for her own financial situation rather than relying on our parents as a safety net. As for me, I maintained my financial independence while cautiously re-engaging with family on personal matters. I visited for holidays, called regularly, but kept financial discussions off limits, except in the context of celebrating positive milestones in their recovery process. The most significant change wasn't in our financial arrangements, but in the power dynamics. By refusing to be manipulated, by being one step ahead of their schemes, I had disrupted patterns established over decades. My family had to confront the reality that emotional leverage would no longer override my boundaries. 6 months ago, I closed on a condominium in Chicago, my first home purchase, financed entirely through my own resources and carefully structured to protect my long-term financial goals. When I shared this news with my family, their reactions were telling. "That's wonderful," my mother said simply, without asking about the cost or suggesting how it might benefit the family. "Smart investment," my father commented, without hinting that he needed a loan or suggesting I should have bought something with space for family visits. These might seem like small things, but they represented profound shifts in our interactions, acknowledgements of my separate life and independent choices that would have been unimaginable 2 years earlier. My family took out a $390,000 loan in my name without telling me, but I was one step ahead, not because I'm inherently more cautious or intelligent, but because I'd recognized the patterns early enough to prepare systematically. The protocols I'd established weren't just about protecting my finances, they were about establishing boundaries that made authentic relationships possible. The tools I use professionally, risk assessment, contingency planning, systematic response, proved equally valuable in my personal life, allowing me to address a crisis with clarity rather than reactive emotion. What could have been a financial catastrophe became instead a painful but necessary restructuring of family dynamics. I still maintain my contingency protocols, updated to reflect new understandings of family patterns and potential vulnerabilities. This isn't cynicism, but realism. Recovery from decades of financial dysfunction takes years, not months, and relapses are always possible. But these plans now exist alongside a cautious hope that through this difficult process, something healthier might eventually emerge. Relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Communications grounded in truth rather than manipulation. Being one step ahead isn't about anticipating the worst in people. It's about creating space where the best can emerge without fear that vulnerability will be exploited. In preparing for the worst while remaining open to growth, I found a path forward that neither sacrifices self-protection nor abandons the possibility of genuine connection, a balance that continues to guide my approach to family relationships and to life itself.